Welcome to Because the Beatles, the podcast about the Beatles, everything about the Beatles, 24/8. I'm Erica.
And I'm Allison. Before we start, as always, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get podcasts, or stream us on Spotify. If you're enjoying Because the Beatles, feel free to leave us a preferably 5-star review so other Beatlemaniacs can find us.
Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll be posting videos, photos, and more from this episode and beyond. And you can also email us at bcthebeatles@gmail.com.
Yes, and today is a very special episode. I'm so excited. All about my favorite Paul McCartney album.
Making me hungry for some pie, some flaming pie.
Hell yeah. I wouldn't recommend eating a flaming pie, though, because, fire.
Okay, I see. I'll stick with listening to it. Or I will use my brand new flaming pie oven mitt that I just bought off the paulmccartney.com website.
Oh my God.
To shield myself from that hot flaming pie.
We just, as we were just chatting before we started recording, we just discovered that there's flaming pie merch on paulmccartney.com. Yeah, Erica just bought the mitt. I'm going to buy the mitt. And there's a flaming pie stamp, which, it's exciting, the deepest child part of me, because I always wanted one when I was a kid. And I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to make that effing happen. And I will be complete. I'll be complete as a human. This is it.
I am so excited to receive a letter from you with the flaming pie stamp on that envelope. Oh my God.
It's going to be all over. I'm going to get so many different kinds of inks. It's going to be an extravaganza of this stamp. I will stamp it everywhere. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so flaming pie.
Yeah, this is, like I said, my favorite Paul album. And I get flack for saying that because it's like how that's like sort of unheard of, that Flaming Pie from 1997 is your favorite Paul McCartney album. But I have a lot of memories forming a relationship with this album right after I became a Beatles fan, because I became a Beatles fan in 2000, and this was like still the new Paul album. Yes, there was Run Devil Run in 1999, which is also, fucking love that album, but this is, the last Paul album of like original material that he put out, and it was a big one. And I just fell in love with this album, played it all the time. I can still like see myself as a kid, like sitting on the ground listening to the song we were singing. That song always brings back memories of being like 14, 15 years old and just like worshiping this album. Yeah. I love the little flaming pie logo, hence why I'm getting the stamp. I bought a domain in 2001 called flaming-pie.net. Anybody who knew me on the internet back then, they will remember that. And I recently, piece of trivia, I got it back. So I got flaming-pie.net back, which I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but
do something with it.
I'm very glad to have it. Yeah, it's a little piece of my digital history, if you will. I love this album, and I'm excited that we're going to talk about it, and I'm excited to talk about these amazing McCartney Archive releases that just came out. I really thought when we heard the rumors that they were going to do Flaming Pie next, I'm like, no freaking way. Like, you're punking me. Like, it's not going to happen. Lo and behold, they are out, and they are glorious.
They did this one well.
Yes, they did it right. They did. Oh my gosh. We'll talk about it when we get further on in our episode. But the deluxe edition, I can't even think about where to start, because I have like the 3 LP laying here and the deluxe edition, and it's like both of them are just so beautiful and well done, and they got so much shit on them that's like it's mind-blowing. It literally leaves me at a loss.
Yeah, it's simply artistic the way they did it. Just so much to explore.
It's the detail. It really is. Like, I did a live unboxing on our Instagram, which is still up. You can go find it at BC the Beatles on Instagram. But when I got the deluxe edition, which is not the big box, but it's the next big box, and people were warning me. They're like, be careful. Like, there's a pick that falls out of that envelope. I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad you told me, because I probably would have lost it. But yeah, you're right that there's stuff tucked in. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's awesome.
The album is awesome too. It feels so timeless, and a lot of it is owed to the Beatles themselves.
how this album came to be is really, it is very interesting because you can thank the Beatles really for this album. A lot of the songs on Flaming Pie, which we're going to go track by track, not necessarily in album order, but more in the order when as they were written, because some of them stem back. One of them stems back to 1969 when Paul and Linda were first married, and the years afterwards when they were raising their young family. Around the time of Flaming Pie's sort of inception, Paul had been doing the Beatles anthology project with George and Ringo, and of course George Martin and many others. And then he started to get, for really the first time in his life, really nostalgic about the 60s. From the time the band broke up, really through the 70s, 80s, early 90s, he was really kind of focused on his career, Wings, and the anthology was really the first time when he took a look back.
It started actually a little bit before that, I think, because the 89-90 tour was the first time where he started putting Beatles songs back into the set list when he took out the Hofner. And I think that was probably about the time when they started really working on anthology.
That's right, because the fact that Paul brought back the Hofner was a massive deal, right?
Mm-hmm. It was huge.
With the Beatles anthology project, which was 95, there were 2 new Beatles songs. I wasn't a fan then. Erica, do you remember those coming out?
I do. I remember watching them in my grandparents' house with my dad because it all happened over Thanksgiving holidays. I don't remember Real Love, but I remember seeing that video of Free as a Bird with like the grainy black and white Liverpool aerial shots. And
so great.
Just seeing like, oh my God, this is just, it's a real Beatles song. Like they made another Beatles song. Holy shit.
It was like a fantasy. People say like, they never thought they'd see another new Beatles song in their lifetime. And both of those tracks were produced by Jeff Lynne of ELO, and Tom Petty's producer, and done so many things, which I actually didn't realize that, but knowing it makes a lot of sense because those sound like Jeff Lynne produced songs, but I'm not mad about it.
They totally do. I didn't realize how much Jeff Lynne was involved in Flaming Pie until I started going track by track.
Yeah, totally. He was very instrumental, pun intended, along with obviously Steve Miller, who we'll talk about. Obviously, this is like Paul sort of stepping back into the Beatle years. And, we've seen a lot more of that come out over the 23 years since Flaming Pie was released. One of the things that Paul sort of rediscovered in this anthology project was how the Beatles recorded. It blows my mind because it wasn't all like artists take time to record albums today. They take years between records. They have massive production and all that stuff. No, the Beatles, they worked shifts at EMI Studios. So because of the union, they were under the Musicians Union. They worked in 3-hour chunks from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then 2:30 to 5:30 and then 7 to 10. And in between, they took their breaks, their union-regulated breaks. And Paul has said that it never took John and him more than 4 hours to write a song. And that was like pushing it. Like says sometimes it only took them 2.
That's just incredible genius at work right there.
Yeah, because it was like really under strict conditions. It's like, okay, you have 3 hours here, 3 hours there, and you have to take this break, even if you're in the middle of something.
I would love to be a fly on the wall one day, go back in time and see what a recording session was like back then. I mean, the engineers, they wore lab coats. It was patriarchal with the engineers were the parents and you did what they said. Yeah, I can't imagine even the Beatles 4 years later willing to comply with any of this kind of thing.
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, they really changed all that. Obviously, like their sessions would go all night. They probably wouldn't even start sometimes till like 10 or 11. I think they're probably a big part in changing the regulations for musicians being able to kind of have more freedom in the studio.
Yeah, and drugs. Drugs helped too.
Oh, yeah, drugs. Yes, drugs. Yes. So because Paul had been so enmeshed in the anthology project, the label was like, Paul, listen, if you don't want to come out with a record, you have this contract stipulates you have to come out with XYZ records. But, you've been so busy with this, you don't have to come out with a new one. But Paul, he came out of the anthology with really inspired. He really wanted to create an album using the same sort of quick and dirty method that the Beatles use in the studio, and how he and John Song wrote. What? How they wrote songs? There we go.
Yeah, that sounds right.
There we go. So Flaming Pie, naturally, was the resulting album. He likes to call it the quote-unquote Don't Sweat It album because again, a lot of things were done quick and dirty. A lot of things were done in his studio, kind of stripped down. It was a very much like a loose album. And he really wanted to have like that homemade feel to it, where he's playing the majority of the instruments and the songs are kind of off the cuff in some cases. Some cases they're literally a jam that maybe he put words to, or he and Steve Miller are playing off each other. Of course, the name kind of blends itself to a homemade approach, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
The logo, which you'll be stamping all over the place.
yes, again, when I stamp that literally all over my walls. Oh, accent wall. Interesting.
Oh my God.
Dude, I have a flaming pie poster. I have one. I bought on eBay like 10 or 15 years ago. Oh, that would be amazing. Okay,
Do you
anyway.
have a backsplash? Just wondering, do you have a backsplash that doesn't have any tiles on it? Because
No. But that, oh my gosh, that would be amazing in the kitchen.
I do. You're going to have to come visit me with a stamp.
Oh, yes, that's happening. Okay. This is great. Welcome to Interior Designing with Flaming Pie.
I will mention you made a pie.
I did.
Out of
yeah.
From the flaming pie inserts, which we'll get to later, but you did cook a flaming pie.
I cooked 2 of Linda's pies in this process.
Amazing.
Yeah, you'll hear my official review later in the episode. But yeah, I did some baking, which is crazy. But, quarantine. All right, so let's get into the tracks. Like I said, Paul, kind of mined his back catalog for some songs, which he tends to do. And then we're going to go through them one by one, not necessarily in the album order, but we're going to start with by far the oldest song on the album, which actually finishes the album, and that is Great Day.
This might be my favorite song on the album. I love this song.
Why?
I really love the McCartney album, and not just as a experiment and acoustic and being out in his own. I love that homemade sort of country adjacent feeling that he has when he does these little songs, and Great Day fits right in there with like Hey Diddle and Teddy Boy and all of those songs that he did back then. It's just a sweet, lovely little song.
That makes a lot of sense because it really originated around the McCartney days. It could have been on an album like Hey Diddle or Bip Bop or whatever, but it only emerged on Flaming Pie. This is a song that he and Linda would sing to the kids in the kitchen in the mornings, or just one of the songs they would sing around the house as a family. One of the lovely things about this song is that Linda is very prominent on this. She does the harmonies and the callbacks at the end of the track. And on the DVDs, one of the DVDs that's included with the deluxe edition of the box, oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful clip of Paul and Linda in the studio recording it together. And it's so bittersweet, obviously, because this is the last Paul album she was involved with, because she was diagnosed with cancer during the making of the album, and she passed away less than a year after it was released in 1998. So it's a bittersweet album, and it's a bittersweet end to the album. And in fact, it was a last-minute addition. So the second to last track, Beautiful Night, is a really big number. It's a meaty song. And he felt like it needed something to close the album, kind of like Her Majesty closes Abbey Road. And so he decided to toss this on at the last minute.
Great idea. It's a wonderful way to close out the album. It really does do, I think, what he wanted to do, which was kind of ease out of this whole thing in a really handmade kind of feel.
Yeah,
which,
and
Beautiful Night does not do.
And we all know Paul loves like a secret track at the end of the album. Off the Ground has that with Cosmically Conscious, but it's not a secret, but it is sort of in that vein.
And this song is still in the fan zeitgeist, as it were, as part of the Flaming Pie Archive release. Paul's team had requested that fans send in videos of themselves at home, as they said, enjoying a great day with the people they love, to be edited together in a fan video. That video came out recently on September 13th. It's really cute. Like, it's a mix of people doing cute things with their dogs or working from home, some people making masks, some essential workers. One thing that stood out to me was that at 1 minute, 19 seconds, there's this guy in it that freaks me out because, like, I don't know if he did one of those face swap things or what, but he looks so much like Paul, like bearded, like Let It Be Paul, and he's just like sitting there with like a flaming pie t-shirt on, like it almost looks like he's like mixing and singing along, and he just it's weird.
Oh, I see it. I just went there in the video. Totally.
Like, doesn't it look like he used like the Reface app or something to make himself into Paul?
You know what's funny? It's like he's got like it looks like a drawing of Paul like on the back of the McCartney album, like in front of him, which is kind of
Yeah.
like what you're talking about, like the look that
Hmm.
he kind of resembles.
If that's his real face, that's a good cosplay for him. He's
Yeah,
good.
he should do that. He should
Yeah.
cosplay Let It Be Paul.
I mean, I'd be there for it.
There you go. Definitely. There's been some other videos that have come out around these releases too, which some are better than others. Well, we'll talk about it. The second song we're going to talk about is The World Tonight, another one of the album's big numbers, another one with like some really beautiful videos that go along with it. Paul has talked about he wrote this on holiday in the US in 1995. It's funny that he said this song started off folkier. I guess I can hear it if I think about it, but it ended up quite heavier because part of the creation of this album was Linda sort of persuading Paul to start to show off his electric guitar skills. You know, we've kind of seen it since with him sort of shredding like Hendrix on tour and that kind of thing. But this is where she was like, you know, Paul, you're pretty good at the electric guitar. You should put some edgier stuff on this album. And in fact, she would say later that he probably could have done more on Flaming Pie. The World Tonight recorded during Paul's second session with Jeff Lynne, who produced a good chunk of this album. And in the DVDs included in the box, he addresses what is my favorite line, probably one of my favorite lines of any Paul song, which is, I go back so far, I'm in front of me. I've marveled at it since I was a kid. And he said that he gets asked about it and what it means. And he says it's just nonsense that, like, quote unquote, came to him as he was writing, which, like, really pissed me off. It really pissed me off, I gotta say.
But that's how they were. Like Paul said in one of the liner notes, he said, if I'd been writing with John, he would have gone, okay, leave that one in. We don't know what it means, but we do know what it means. I think he was probably referring to like the movement you need is on your shoulder or something like
Right.
that. That's part of the reasons they're such fucking geniuses. They could just come up with this stuff. And all of
Yeah.
us are sitting here like, that's brilliant. They're like, I don't know.
But, like, IDK, I guess. I mean, yeah, because these lines, they sound like gobbledygook, but we can instantly relate to them. Like, I go back so far in front of me. Oh my God, I get it. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know why I get it, but I totally get it. I love that line.
it's brilliant.
I've always kind of thought the song was about Linda and how she was like harassed and hounded by paparazzi and angry fans when they got together. There's a line that, I saw you sitting in the center of a circle, everybody wanted something from you, and he talks about paparazzi. That was what immediately came to my mind when I heard it the first time.
Well, I think that makes so much sense. I hadn't thought about it before, but then when I started thinking about it, there's kind of a through line from this song and the encouragement he would be giving her to basically, don't mind them, fuck off, whatever, to her final song that she recorded, The Light Comes From Within, which was the giant fuck off to her haters.
That's so true. I didn't even think about that.
And it probably, I mean, it was in the same sort of time period.
It definitely was. And oh, interesting. I mean, that's the thing. It's like with any of us, but especially with songwriters, it's like there's so much in your subconscious. Like, I'm sure there's some connection there. You're probably
Mhm.
right. Um, so now we're going to move to the other big song on Flaming Pie, which is Beautiful Night. And it is kind of like the biggest song. Kind of old at this point when Paul finally properly recorded it. It was at least 10 years old. And he had a recording of it made around 1986. He didn't really know what to do with it, actually. He recorded it in New York around that time with some of Billy Joel's guys, which I would love to hear that. I don't think it's on this box. But it makes a lot of sense that he would record it with Billy Joel's guys.
It does kind of have that feel. It's very piano heavy.
It's funny you say that because there's a scene in the DVD, and I laugh because I've heard this, like, I don't know, to call it a parody, I guess, of Beautiful Night Forever, and it's Paul and Ringo at the piano. and they like sort of sing it the cabaret, almost like Billy Joel style. And they start it, but when it goes into like the second verse of the bridge or whatever, like they start singing, "Cause you're a bastard," ha 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 ha. And
That's absurd.
I remember like a shitty like wave file of this like circulating the internet in the early aughts, and I just loved it so much. But I never knew where it came from until I watched the documentary on this box, which is in the world tonight. It brought me back immediately to like sitting online at like 2 a.m. like listening to this and like laughing my ass off. Like when it came on the documentary, it was hilarious.
Amazing.
I love it. And speaking of Ringo, this song is why Paul invited Ringo to join him in the studio. Obviously, they'd just done the anthology together. Like Paul has asked Ringo to do stuff on his albums forever. So yeah, this was the song that caused him to ask Ringo to join him. Ringo will reappear on a couple other tracks too. And this song features a gorgeous score by George Martin, recorded pretty late in the album process, actually. This was another like last minute sort of like, I think a score would be great on this song deal. Recorded in February 1997. The DVDs, again, to talk about them some more, they include some amazing footage of these recording sessions with Paul and George Martin, and some of them are very funny, and some of them are just very like, you get to see the whole process. It's very cool.
I'm glad he kept this on the shelf for 10 years
It was meant
because
to be, yeah.
he liked the synth so much in the 80s. And I feel
Oh,
like if he had produced this in the 80s, there's a good chance it could have been overproduced, really synthy. Maybe George Martin wouldn't have been involved because the anthology wasn't happening yet. And so it wasn't on his mind. And it might not have been the epic masterpiece that we hear now.
absolutely. And it's funny because the next song we're going to talk about was written around the time of the Off the Ground sessions, and it didn't really fit kind of that full band sound that, Paul was into at that time. And when you say that, it's like I can't imagine this song ending up on Off the Ground because it would have been it would have sounded totally different.
Yeah.
And of course, that's Calico Skies. And this is probably one of only like two or three from this album that Paul occasionally busts out live. I wish he'd do more. There are a lot of songs on this album that would be so good live.
And I wish he did it a little differently because he kind of changes how this song is done when he does it live, and I don't like it.
Oh, sidebar. I think it was 3 years ago today we saw Paul at NASA.
Oh, yes, I've been seeing those pictures.
Yes. Oh my God. Happy Paulversary.
Oh my God, happy anniversary. That was maybe the last time I've seen him? I can't remember. No, I think I've seen him one time in between.
Did you? Maybe.
Maybe not. No, I don't think so. That was the last time I saw Paul.
I think that was the last time for me too because of my Dodger Stadium debacle, which I won't get into because I will cry.
Happy times, happy thoughts.
Happy thoughts. Yeah, Paul. That was a great show. Amazing. We were like in what, like fifth row or something?
Fifth row, right in front of Paul.
So effing good. Anyway. Yeah, Calico Skies. So anyway, this song was written in the Hamptons, again, during Hurricane Bob, which happened in August 1991. And as a lot of us do, I have memories growing up in the Midwest of hiding in the basement during like tornadoes. The hurricane sent the McCartney family down to the basement. And, they really didn't have any entertainment other than old-fashioned, good old guitar time. So Paul decided to make up a song. And I laugh when I say this because he says this a lot. But he says he wanted to make something kind of like Blackbird, which drink every time he says that, guys, really.
Right.
Yeah, but then he sort of calls it a love song that became a 60s protest song.
I'm looking at you, Jenny Wren.
Yeah, there's a couple of different later Blackbird incarnations, but
just a few.
But yeah, this is a great song. So the demo of this, which is included in a lot of the different configurations of the archive, is really cute. It features some really nice family chatter, and at the end, one of the kids says, "Nice one, Dad."
That's so cute.
so cute. It's adorable. And again, we'll talk about more of this at the end, but the demos on these boxes are amazing, and to hear the evolution of these tracks is awesome. Going from Calico Skies to one of my favorite tracks, might be my favorite. I love this song. It's so underrated. And if I have one qualm about the archive, it doesn't give it enough love. And this track is called Souvenir. And it's just so heartfelt. It's so emotional. The album was almost named Souvenir. So maybe it would have got more love. JK.
Probably.
Yeah. It has a really funny connection to the title track, which we'll talk about in a second. But I got to mention first the demo of this is my favorite demo, appropriately, because it has a completely different feel. Paul's almost in a falsetto the whole time. I think a phone rings in the middle of it. It feels very, organic, recorded during Paul's Jamaican vacation. It's awesome. I can't recommend it enough. I think it's on Spotify.
This was the one where he liked the demo so much that he played it in the background so he could hear it while he was recording the studio version so that he could try and get that same feel to it.
Yeah, and it doesn't really change much insofar as the melody and the cadence and how it kind of comes together, but it's just sort of, it has a different attitude in the demo, and it's just lovely. And this song was actually really instrumental, again, haha, in creation and the creation and evolution of the album itself, because when Paul was working with Jeff Lynne, they started adding in a bunch of guitar parts to Souvenir, and they started changing it, and it started to get heavier, and then it started to get faster, and they were experimenting. But then, there was like a whole new derivative song that came from this weird tinkering with Souvenir, and that's called Flaming Pie, the title
Yay!
track.
So excited for my oven mitts.
I know. Could there be a better product for Flaming Pie?
No,
I think not. Yeah, I didn't know this, but now, again, knowing it, it makes so much sense. I could totally hear how Souvenir and Flaming Pie are siblings.
Yeah.
And so Flaming Pie is really true to the concept of the album, because this is where Paul said to Jeff Lynne, who was in the studio with them, let's do what John and I did. Let's create a song and record it and everything, have it done and dusted in 4 hours. And he sort of already had the germ of this rolling around in his mind, because one day he was riding horses with Linda outside, and he was sort of like, his mind is wandering, thinking about lyrics, and he thought of sky, and he's like, what rhymes with sky? And for a moment he thought of pie, and then he's like, how would I write a song with the word pie in it? Like, what?
That's ridiculous. The guy who gave us Obla Di Obla Da and Luke First Indian on the Moon thinks that the word pie is a ridiculous word to integrate into a song.
He draws the line at pie, Erica, really.
Jesus.
That's what we're finding out.
Wow.
He's like, this is too crazy even for me.
God, he must really have a thing about pie.
Right? I mean, fish and finger pies?
True, he'd already used pie.
Yeah.
God, that's a gross phrase.
That's Penny Lane. What's Sick song?
Dude, nasty.
Not appropriate. We'll have to do a whole episode about inappropriate Beatles things.
Oh my God. And do a whole series about inappropriate Beatles things.
Yeah, true. Anyway, so, but he's got pie on the brain here, as, we've all been there. But he remembered, he thought back to not so distant past, John's Man on Flaming Pie story, because that showed up in the anthology. It shows up in the Anthology 1 album, where there's an audio clip of John saying the Flaming Pie story, which is, so the Flaming Pie story is that John was talking to Mersey Beat magazine, and this is actually the first issue ever of Mersey Beat in 1961, and he was giving Bill Harry, the editor, a little bit of a fake Beatles bio, like a funny thing with a lot of jokes and, the typical John humor. And John wrote, how did the name arrive? It came in a vision. A man appeared on a flaming pie and said unto them, from this day you are Beatles with an A. Thank you, Mr. Man, they said, thanking him.
Jesus.
Why Jesus?
Every time I hear the story and then I think about Paul writing a song, it's saying, I'm the man on the flaming pie. It just feels so ballsy to insert himself in that narrative like that. And it makes so much sense too, because starting with the 89-90 Flowers in the Dirt tour, as we were talking about, Paul started getting more outspoken about his contributions to the Beatles. He brought back the Hofner. He started making his set list at least 50% Beatles songs, which in the Wings days, he had almost no Beatles songs at all. And if he did, he changed them up and made them sound a bit different. In 1989, I had a quote from him from the 48 Hours with Paul McCartney, which you can find on YouTube. But if you're one of the cool kids like me, you had on VHS, which you wore out when it was made. And in that, the interviewer asked Paul about things that he's seen like out in the world that, made him not too happy. And he said, I've seen one or two things that, kind of said John was the Beatles and these other guys just backed him up. That bothers me because it's not true. I pretty much got to leave that for people to find out. If I start coming on heavy and try to say, hey, I was just as important as John, it's very unseemly. So saying something like that and then putting a song out that says that I'm the man on the flaming pie, to me, I mean, maybe I've got my tinfoil hat on, but I feel like that is Paul saying I matter too. And, just because he passed away does not mean that my contribution should go unnoticed.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I could go off. I have so many thoughts on this topic, but just to keep with the song Easter eggy kind of thing, look at the song Early Days from the new album in 2013. That's the ultimate, fuck you, I was there, I know what happened, you don't. I can only imagine, as you were reading that quote, I was thinking, God, and this is before the internet, this is before everybody has an opinion about Paul and his contribution to the Beatles.
And can you imagine how hard it must have been for him? I mean, not only did he unfortunately react very poorly to the news of John's death publicly, and he does not have a good track record of reacting well to death. And so he got known as being very callous, and then they started deifying John even more than they had done when he was alive. And it must have been extremely frustrating for Paul to, try and keep his mouth shut about that. Like you said, it's unseemly.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I sort of kind of enjoy how he litters these little like I'm good too things throughout his songs over the years. It just sucks that it still bothers him. I think it really does. And he said it in a couple of interviews in the last maybe 5 or 10 years. One of the things we've talked about before on the podcast is that John gets all the credit as the avant-garde Beatle, when Paul is way more avant-garde in a lot of respects. That is just one of the injustices of it. And I get where Paul can be very frustrated by that.
It obviously comes across as petty, so it's hard for him to express it, but at the same time, it's not petty because it bastardizes his relationship with John, his partnership with John, for people to be saying that he was so much more inferior when John would never have said that. John never thought that. Making Paul less does not make John more, and it's just frustrating for everybody around him.
Yeah. As I was saying before, he said in the liner notes for this release, a lot of his songs are subconscious, but that is the ultimate, subconscious sort of line that comes out of your mouth if you're writing a song that involves flaming pie. It's I am the man on the flaming pie.
Yeah, damn.
Yeah, right?
Thank you, Mr. Man. They said thanking him.
Thank you, Mr. Man McCartney.
My God.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I love that it shows up on this album.
And it's not even a callback to I came up with the name Beatles, because he didn't. That was not him. He's never claimed that it's him.
Yeah. He always concedes it's John and Stu who came up with it. But it's I came to John and a vision. Which is hilarious. I mean, it's definitely tongue in cheek, but there's some truth behind it.
There's a little there, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the title seems ridiculous to people who are unfamiliar with the story or whatever. But Paul actually was sort of bouncing ideas off of people for the title of this record. And he's like, okay, what about Souvenir? Okay, what about the song we were singing? Not really. Blah blah blah. Well. Oh, what about Flaming Pie? And everybody laughed. And he was like, okay, well, that's got to be what it's called. And I kind of love that it was a deep Beatles callback, for the Beatles fans who, there was an invigorated fan base after the anthology. And I'm sure they were like, hell yeah, We get that. We know what a flaming pie is.
Yeah, and much larger percentage of the audience would know that after having seen the anthology and buying all of those CDs that they put out because it was on there.
On to what was the first single from this album in the UK called Young Boy. So this track Paul wrote while waiting for Linda on an assignment. Linda would go sometimes to people's houses or a location to do a cooking demonstration or make a lunch for paper. So in this case, it was New York Times, and she was cooking lunch for a writer who's doing a profile in August 1994. And when she would do this, Paul would go with her and maybe drive her and then kind of hang around while she was doing her thing. And he liked to set these challenges for himself. Going back again to he and John would write with these crazy time constraints. So Linda's cook may have taken like 2 hours. So he's like, okay, in 2 hours, I'm going to come out and people are going to say, oh, well, what did you get up to during this time? And he wanted to be able to say, I wrote a full song, which it's like, okay, number
Cheeky
one,
bastard.
it's like number one, you're Paul McCartney. And then he said he would play them the song like on a guitar. And I'm just like, and he's saying this like nonchalantly. I'm like, I would be on the floor passed the fuck out if Paul McCartney was like, let me just play you the song I wrote. I mean,
While I was waiting for you for 2 hours.
yeah, right. Like if you're just like a reporter or a photographer who's there just along for the ride, you're just like, oh, okay. Anyway, back to Young Boy. Paul sings in this song. He sings, he's just a young boy looking for a way to find love. Originally, it was supposed to be Poor Boy. And in the box, you will see some handwritten lyrics from Paul where Poor Boy, another title, was Find Love when he was coming up with this song, scratched out on the lyrics before he finally settles on Young Boy. Yeah, he kind of abandoned Poor Boys because he thought it sounded like Elvis, which totally, definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if you want to hear it with the Poor Boy intact, it's on the demos included in these packages. And it has like an additional bridge that doesn't really fit, and I'm glad he dropped it. So the lyrics were inspired by thinking about James, his son, who was about 18, 19 when this came out, when he was recording it and doing all the work there. So James and his friends, who were about the age where you start to ponder the big things, it's sort of like, oh, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to find somebody? Like, just the mysteries of life that have scared the shit out of all of us sort of occurred to him at that point. Another big impact that James had on this album was James was really into Steve Miller at this point, and Paul sort of had this memory of meeting Steve Miller back in 1969 when, okay, take this with a grain of salt, because with a lot of stories, particularly told by Paul, it really depends on who you believe. But the kernel of truth here is that there was a Beatles session that ended in sort of a fight, if you will.
George walked out. What a surprise.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Shocked.
John did too. George probably led the walkout.
Yeah, no, George was fucking over it by 69. He was just like, I'm out, like, mic drop, I'm out of here. But Paul was essentially left there alone. And then allegedly, and there are several different versions of how this happened, like Steve Miller just poked his head in and was like, hey, is anybody using this? Paul was like, well, I'm here. And he and Steve Miller recorded a song called My Dark Hour, which Steve Miller released on his next album.
So there, George, suck it.
Yes, that's exactly the subtext of what happened, where Paul's like beating the shit out of the drums on My Dark Hour. It's like, this is for you, George Harrison.
Yeah, Ringo, you can suck it too.
Yeah, you can all just suck it, is the gist. So, of course, Paul appears on My Dark Hour under Paul Ramon, because, that rears its ugly head every once in a while. No, I love it. Beautiful. Oh, man. Anyway, so James's interest and this memory, again, Paul's getting really super nostalgic, led Paul to call up Steve Miller and reconnect with him. And he had this track already written, and he's like, oh, this might be a good one for Steve and I to do together. So Steve Miller invited Paul out to his home and studio in Sun Valley, Idaho, and they recorded the track together in February 1995.
It is so 1995.
Do you think so?
It just makes me feel like I'm back in the 90s for some reason.
That's
I don't
so
know what it is.
funny.
I feel that about all of the Steve Miller contributions.
Interesting.
Maybe Steve Miller's style, whatever it was at the time, was really heavily influenced, but every time I feel like he steps out of that like really classic Beatles inspired McCartney songs,
Hmm.
it's those collaborations, and that might be because he was being so heavily influenced by the Beatles, by the anthology, by working with them, that he's just doing something different with somebody else. But I don't know, it pulls me out just a little bit.
That's so fascinating. I never thought about that. It never occurred to me that it's so 90s. But that's kind of how I feel about like the Elvis Costello stuff on Flowers in the Dirt. That sort of
Yep.
pulled me out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Well, we can't move on from Young Boy without mentioning our friend Louis Pearlman, who was on our June episode about Pride. And this song was a very big part of his coming out process to his parents. And again, I'm happy to share this all the time on our social media, but we'll post the article that he wrote about Young Boy and that experience.
I
Yeah.
love that story.
It makes me cry every time I read it. I swear. I'm trying to be a big softie, but that one gets me.
I mean, I really hope that somehow that story gets to Paul, because I feel like that wasn't the reason why he wrote it, because it was more for his own son. Like he was inspired by his own son, but to have to have another family across the world in
Yeah.
Canada become more accepting of their son through listening to this song and hearing the message. I feel like that's just something that Paul would love to hear and know.
Yeah.
And it's unique. It's a very unusual story.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. I hope someday dot dot
Yeah.
dot Paul
Mm.
will find out that happened. And the reason I dot dot dotted there is because the next song we're going to talk about is Some Days.
Speaking of Sunday,
So, speaking of Someday, so this we just talked about how Young Boy was a Waiting for Linda song. This is another Waiting for Linda song, and this one I had a really interesting genesis. So this time he was taken to somebody's home. Linda was cooking in their kitchen, and he asked, is there a room I can go into just to sit and like play guitar? So they put Paul in like their son's bedroom, and it's like a kid, which is random, but okay. And so this kid had like soccer posters all over the walls and was super into that. And so that inspired the line in Some Days, which is who won the match or scored the goal, which is kind of what it's built around. What Paul sort of started with.
it's so interesting. It's a little
Yeah,
peek into the way he writes and his thought process.
totally. And this track, when you hear the demo on the box, it's mostly complete. By the time he committed to tape, it was mostly done, as he was wont to do during these Waiting for Linda times. It actually only took one day to get on tape in November '95, although after that, Paul tapped George Martin for an orchestral arrangement recorded in June '96. And naturally, this is one of George's favorite tracks on the album.
And his orchestral scoring is just impeccable. It's so good. I mean, it's like at Penny Lane level or In My Life level, and it screams George Martin to me. The second that instrumental counterpoint to the main melody comes on, it's just so classically Beatlesque.
Oh, totally. Whatever orchestral stuff is on this album is definitely like George Martin's fingerprint.
Yes. And that's part of, I think, what makes it feel so timeless. We have memories of the Beatles and we have memories of that early McCartney Martin collaboration and the orchestral arrangements. And it feels so familiar because of that.
Yeah, definitely. Ugh, I love it. Now on to this track. Little
Can't.
Willow, which was written pretty recently, before the album was recorded. It was written in Jamaica on Paul's holiday, which, we've mentioned a couple of their songs that were recorded during that time. If you listen to it, it's about, God, how do I even describe what Little Willow is about? It's a tribute to someone who's obviously going through something or been through something. And Paul was at first really cagey about saying who it was about. He did say that it was about a dear friend of the family who'd recently passed away, and that the song was written for this person's children, to sort of comfort them. But around the time of the album's actual release, he conceded it was actually about Maureen Starkey, who had
Mm.
passed away on December 30th, 1994, after a battle with leukemia.
So sad.
I know, I know.
I love the song. I will not watch the video.
The video is cursed. I literally put that in our notes because it's cursed. It's awful. They re-released it for this box. It's on the box on the DVD with all the videos. it was the only one where I was watching the DVD and I had to skip it because it's
Nope, nope, nope.
I noped right out of there. I noped away from that video because it is the
Fuck yeah.
saddest thing. If you want to cry and if you just want to feel bad the rest of the day, go watch the video for Little Willow, okay? Because oh my god, it's so sad. It's so
It is
sad.
beyond sad. Like I can watch something and cry, and like that was a nice, that was a nice catharsis. This one is like you feel like you're gonna die for the rest of the day crying. It's
You
awful.
totally do.
It's
Oh
so
my
bad.
god.
So sad.
It's not okay. It really is not okay. It's pretty sad. So great, yeah, like you said, Erica, great song. Nope, right away from the video.
Yeah, maybe we can start the Little Willow challenge, and we can do
Oh
reaction videos
god.
of people watching the.
Oh my god. The Little Willow challenge. Oh god.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do
Couldn't
it.
do it either. That's hilarious.
But if you're listening and you want to do the Little Willow challenge,
Yeah,
just
watch the video.
film yourself watching it. Don't film the video. Don't show the video because I can't watch it, but film yourself watching it.
Oh my god, I'm crying not from the video. I'm crying because hashtag Little Willow challenge. That's hilarious. Oh my god. Oh Lord.
Always has to be a thing.
This is gonna be interesting if anybody actually does this. Yeah. Tag us. Tag
Please,
us in your Little Willow challenge.
please.
Oh my
Anywhere.
God.
Instagram, TikTok, like put it anywhere. We'll find it.
Put it everywhere, actually. Let's get out of here. Let's go to If You Wanna, which is not my favorite song on the album. It never has been.
Nope.
So Paul has said he wrote this one during the New World Tour in a hotel room in Minneapolis in May '93. He was thinking of a good like driving song or like a road trip song, kind of like Easy Rider. I guess I could hear it. I didn't recognize it before I read that, but I get it now. And he was also a bit inspired because he was in Prince's hometown. So I guess that influenced like the guitar parts and a bit of the melody. Yeah, this is actually Steve Miller's first appearance on the album. He plays guitar here, both acoustic and electric. Paul plays drums and acoustic. Very simple arrangement. It wasn't their first collab. That was Young Boy, which we just covered.
Again, not my favorite. I feel like the Steve Miller collaborations were the weakest on the album, but that might just be I like classic Paul and his anthology mindset better.
After you said the thing about how the Steve Miller songs kind of sound dated, I totally hear that now. Now I'm thinking about If You Wanna, Used to Be Bad, which we're going to talk about next, coincidentally. Totally can hear that.
Yep. Speaking of Used to Be Bad.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so after collaborating with Steve Miller in Idaho, Paul invited him back to England to record in his studio. And he really wanted to kind of take advantage of Miller's knack for bluesy licks and the blues. So they semi-improvised Used to Be Bad, where they trade lines back and forth throughout the track. And Miller has said he also wanted to get Paul, quote unquote, singing blues.
Why? Why do we have to have Paul singing the blues? There are lots of blues dudes who sing the blues. I don't know. Whatever. I just don't like these collaborations.
Go off.
There are blues singers to sing the blues. Paul doesn't need to sing the blues. This song feels like a half-finished semi-jam that it is. I skip it.
Yeah, I've got to say I've skipped this song since I was like 14 because I just like you can tell it's like a jam and they're making it up as they go and it's not that great. But whatever. If it's your favorite, good for you. Let us know. Somebody's got to love this song.
I want to hear somebody who's going to die on the hill of Used to Be Bad.
Yes, I'm all for people who die on hills that are random and weird. So if you die on the Used to Be Bad hill, I'm 100% supportive. That's great.
It's interesting though that the day before Paul and Steve Miller had recorded Broomstick. That's on the fourth?
It's on the fourth disc, yeah.
And so this one was thought to be the better choice to put on the final album.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd argue with that.
That's just what I'm saying about this collaboration.
Yeah. You're like point example.
I can't.
So Broomstick, which if you've not heard it, it's included, like Erica said, in disc 4 with a couple of other tracks that were semi-destined for the album, which we'll mention in a little bit. But it was also issued as a second track on the Young Boy CD single when that came out. So it did see the light of day, but didn't make it past Used to Be Bad for the album.
Yeah.
So speaking of jams that you skip on the album, this I haven't mentioned this is my favorite Paul album. So Really Love You. First of all, it's the only McCartney Starkey writing credit in existence, which is unfucking believable.
Seriously.
And I don't want to get myself in hot water, but it certainly sounds like a McCartney Starkey writing credit. It's pretty much a jam. Paul has said that after Ringo was done recording the other tracks, namely Beautiful Night for the album, they didn't want to stop having fun. They were like really enjoying just jamming and hanging out together. So they called over Jeff Lynne and they were like, hey, like, let's just sit here and jam. Which, by the way, if I were Jeff Lynne, I know he's like a big deal, but I would be like, holy shit, Paul and Ringo want to jam with me.
You're still starstruck by
that. I would hope he's not jaded enough to be like, okay, whatever, who cares,
God, I hope
yeah, so the lyrics are pretty nonsensical. They were making it up as they were going along. And Ringo has said of the track, which I actually love this because it's totally on the nose. He said, quote unquote, it's relentless. Agreed, Ringo. 100% good review.
It sounds also like a lot of Paul's Electric Argument's Fireman album, which was also let's make it up in a day on the spot. This is like the level you get when Paul wants to jam. This is what you get.
That's true, but I gotta say, Electric Arguments is way better than Really Love You.
I love parts of that album.
Love that album.
I love parts of that album very, very much, though.
Yes.
So maybe it makes up for.
That's true. That's true. So we're getting towards the end of our track list here, but this is probably the newest song in proximity to the album's release, Heaven on a Sunday. This is the one that gets stuck in my head a lot. Like, you think about it once and you're like, screw the rest of the day. So this was written, Paul was out in the Hamptons one day on his little sailing boat called the Sunfish, just a one-person cedar in August of 96. And he says in the DVD, I thought this was really funny, when you turn 40, you're supposed to like pick up a hobby. I don't know how he came up with this. And he said, since quote unquote life begins at 40, which I believe is a John quote, unless John nicked it from somewhere else.
John definitely said it. I don't know where it came from though.
Yeah. And so Paul decided to take up two things, painting and sailing. And
of course,
I really liked where he went with this because he said those two things, painting and sailing, always seemed quote unquote for other people, meaning rich people when he was growing up, which I've had moments of that in my life too. Even when I buy like the dress is not on sale, I'm like, oh, this is for rich people, and yeah. Paul has had a lot of that historically. He has said that even when he buys a guitar like full price, he's like, I can't really afford this. And I think when you grow up poor, like you always have that in your mind. So I think that's very cool that he was like, no, I'm going to paint and I'm going to sail. And that's going to be what I do at 40.
That is nice. I like his painting too.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I like the abstract stuff. Yeah. So the peacefulness of being out on his little boat on this Sunday is inspired the song. And he said he liked the idea that heaven, like during the week, was crazy. It was just busy, like a madhouse. But on a Sunday, it would be relaxed, which...
It is the day of rest.
I know. It is a very funny, like, mental image for me.
Good insight on his idea of spirituality.
Yes, there you go. Again, this song was written after Linda had been diagnosed with cancer. She was going through her treatments. And as we've said about Paul's writing process, he always says, it's whatever I write about, it's probably subconscious. And so this definitely, I think, relates back to that with heaven and the line that always echoes in my mind, which is, if I only had one love, yours would be the one I'd choose. I definitely think that's subconscious Linda stuff.
Yeah, now I'm sad.
I know. Well, listen to the middle bit where Paul and James trade guitar solos. And so Paul was on the acoustic guitar, and Paul said in the liner notes, he left the young Turk to play the hot electric stuff. And it's really cute in the DVD because you watch Paul listen back to their recording, and he's just like a proud dad. It's really cute. Really, really cute.
James sounds great too.
Yeah, they were just riffing. It's like, oh, okay, James, could you go on to Really Love You? Like, maybe that's a good idea. Like, no, I'm not.
Let's just leave that where it is.
Let's leave that where it is. Let's go to the first song on the album because I love this song and it sets it up perfectly, I feel like. This is another track written in Jamaica, January 95, called The Song We Were Singing, which again was almost the title of the album. It was recorded during Paul's first session with Jeff Lynne, 9 months after Jeff Lynne produced the Beatles' single Real Love. And this is kind of the ultimate nostalgia track. Paul has said that it was inspired by thinking back on memories of like passing out a pipe and like hanging out with friends and like just like talking all night in the 60s.
Oh yeah, because that's only happened to him in the 60s.
Well, it's I keep laughing, but like I keep thinking about the DVDs included in the box because there's a lot of scenes with Paul like sitting around a fire. Like I imagine it's in the Hamptons and him just like looking totally disheveled in like a
Oh my God.
robe and like all this pajamas, like his pajamas or whatever. And he's like poking at a fire. And I'm like, Paul, you're sitting around a fire right now. Anyway. Yes.
And he was probably stoned.
Probably. I would like to think so. Although there are different parts where he's like cutting down trees, so I hope he's not stoned for that.
Oh yeah.
On this track, Paul plays a stand-up bass belonging to Sun session musician Bill Black. Bill Black he played on a lot of Elvis Presley's early and greatest hits. It's actually a right-handed bass, but Paul sort of figured his way to play it left-handed, and he proudly shows off on the DVD how he can play Heartbreak Hotel.
That's just so cute.
It's very cute. And it's even cuter when you know that Linda bought the bass for Paul for his birthday in 1974.
She was good at the gifts.
She knocked it out of the park.
Again, it's got that timeless Paul sound, most likely influenced by the anthology sessions, working again with Jeff Lynne. It almost sounds like Rocky Raccoon to me, with like
I can hear
kind of
that.
a 90s feel.
Yeah, I can hear that.
It's cool. It's weird. I like it. It's a great way to start it off.
The demo of this track, too, has the same sort of vocal flourish that he uses on the finished version. And it's got 2 extra verses. It almost sounds like another song. And then a plane flies over. So it's really got everything.
All the things I like in a song.
I know. Plane noises, check. All right, so we've come to the end of the track listing. So let's talk a little bit more about these releases. Flaming Pie was released as part of the Grammy-winning McCartney Archive series. If you're not familiar with all the different configurations, check out paulmccartney.com. They're all up on there. We're going to talk about the 3LP and the deluxe edition, which as of right now are both sold out, but I've noticed they restock every so often, so check back on paulmccartney.com for those if you don't have them, or check out your local indie retailer, because I've seen people sort of scooping them up at record stores.
They might be on eBay too.
Oh, yeah.
But also, while you're waiting for your album to come, they are on Spotify, so you can hear this music before you get the physical copy.
Indeed. So the 3LP, which is magnificent, it's the original album on 2 LPs, and then there's 1 LP of the home recordings / demos of some of the tracks. The deluxe edition, it comes in this beautiful case. It's velour, or not velour, like not velvet, but it's really soft. It almost feels like a bound book without its jacket. It attracts cat hair like you would not believe. I know that because science, because I'm a cat. Hi, Epi. Yeah, side note, this deluxe edition comes in like a cardboard, like not a box, but sort of like a frame around it to keep it nice. And Epi immediately co-opted that, and now it's still laying on our floor, but it's like totally flat. He doesn't even care. He just loves it.
I love cats.
Yeah, exactly. And so this baby has 7 discs, 5 CDs, 2 DVDs. CD 1 is the remastered album, 2 is the home recording, so that's what you get in the 3LP version. CD 3, studio demos. And this, I was very pleasantly surprised when I saw that it includes a rough mix of Whole Life.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which I forgot about that song totally, but I remember loving it when it came out. I remember that was like one of the only things I ever bought from iTunes was Whole Life.
Oh, nice.
Because that was the only way to get it. Yeah. So definitely that is a real gem. There's a lot of gems, but that one was really cool. CD 4, miscellaneous recordings. We've mentioned Broomstick. There's also a track on it called The Ballad of the Skeletons, which is a collab between Paul and Allen Ginsberg, of all people.
That sounds weird.
Yeah, that sounds weird. Exactly. Yeah, well, that's also on Spotify, so you can check it out. For those of you who
Okay.
don't, who don't have access immediately to it. And then, yeah, it's got tracks Almost Made It on Flaming Pie, Looking for You, Love Come Tumbling Down. And some of these actually have handwritten facsimile of the lyrics in the box as well.
So many little physical Easter eggs in these
Oh,
boxes.
dude, totally. And CD4 also has parts 1 through 6 of Paul's radio show Ubu Jubu, which
I was expecting more from those cuts of Boo Boo Jubu.
really,
There's some cool stuff on it, but they just kind of mashed it all together in like 6, 8 minute tracks.
yeah.
But there's hours and hours of Boo Boo Jubu that you can find on YouTube.
Yeah, I remember like coming across that stuff in like the early aughts online and just being like, what the hell is this? But yeah, Ubu Jubu is definitely worth tracking down.
We should do an episode about Ubu Jubu. It's the
Oh,
weirdest thing.
we
I love
should.
it. Love it.
That was my Tumblr name for a long time, was Ubu Jubu.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
I know. I think it might still be, but I don't really use my Tumblr, so I
My
think
Macaboard username was Ubu Jubu, actually.
what?
Yeah.
Weird.
God.
Dude, that's awesome. That's great.
That's ridiculous.
I'm impressed that you claim that. CD5 on this is called Flaming Pie at the Mill, which is an hour-long recording of Paul giving a tour of his studio, The Mill in Sussex. There's some footage, honestly, I glossed over this one a little bit just because there's a lot of footage from the studio tour in the DVDs. And DVD 1 is the In the World Tonight documentary about the making of Flaming Pie. So you do see a lot of Paul's studio. You see the bass, you see the boards, you see him playing the intro to Strawberry Fields Forever, like that kind of thing. But you also see a lot of behind the scenes footage of Paul and Ringo and the recording of You're a Bastard, which I mentioned before. Linda is in it quite a bit. So that is just absolutely wonderful to see her. Yeah, just generally great footage of 90s Paul when he was super normcore and he was like just dressing like shit and just being a guy. Like I miss that.
Fashion
I
sense
miss
is
that Paul so much.
We have him preserved for forever
We
in
do.
these documentaries. Now, is the CD and the DVD, are they all contemporary to the recording of Flaming Pie, or are they new as of now?
No, they
Footage?
are contemporary to the recording. Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes. Which is very, yeah. So you do get to see, like, it's just 90s Paul's natural habitat. It's wonderful.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
And then DVD 2 kind of has everything else. So it has all the music videos for Young Boy, The World Tonight, Beautiful Night, plus a making of the Beautiful Night music video, which it's not the one that you were mentioning, Erica, because there are a couple. It's the one where like Linda's in the phone booth and Paul's sort of like controlling everything like he's God.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a making of that video. And then, of course, there's the cursed video for Little Willow.
Hashtag Little Willow Challenge. Do it.
There you go. That's where you can find it if you can't find it on YouTube, but it's on YouTube. Anyway, and then there's what I really liked on this DVD is there's a clip of the Flaming Pie artwork meeting where they're talking.
Oh my god.
Yeah, where they're talking about like the cover and like the different. There's like little flowers and things inside the liner notes, and it's like Paul and Linda and a couple of people involved in the production sitting around talking about it. It's very cool, and Paul sort of like whips out this version of the cover, which is what is the final cover, but it's he like colored it and drew all over it and stuff. Yeah, it's cool. I really enjoyed that little peek into that process.
I would love to see that. I mean, when I'm not podcasting, I'm an art director, so that would
There
be
you
so
go.
cool.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll end up on YouTube, I hope. Anyway, so yeah, it's rounding out DVD 2 is, gosh, interviews, EPKs, performances. It's pretty long and it's got a lot of stuff on it. So you definitely feel like you could have a good afternoon with this DVD. Also included a 128-page book, amazing Chris Heath liner notes. There's track annotations. And this is where the little booklet of pie recipes by Linda come into play because they're stuck into this book. And so, as I said, I made 2 of them. One was like a cheese pie, and the other one was like a tomato pie.
Oh my god, they sound so good. I want to eat them now.
Oh, dude. Okay, so the tomato pie, I think I need to tweak it a little bit. But it was good. It was great. But I kind of know what I did wrong, and it was all me because I am not a cook. But I think next time I make it, it'll be better. But the cheese pie, holy shit, it was so good. I don't even
I
know.
mean, if you're saying cheese and pie and that's the same recipe, you can't go wrong.
Dude, yeah. So she didn't have in her, she sort of just had like, the pie base and then like a layer of onions. But I added like a layer of spinach and I put some garlic in there as well. And then I poured on the cheese, which is just like a heart attack inducing amount of like cheddar cheese mixed with heavy cream.
Oh my God.
Um, so this is basically health food.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just like the core of the pie, and then you just bake it, and it is oh my god, like yeah, I need to make it again, but I'm trying not to.
I think
Basically,
you need to take some pictures of those things and text them to me because I need to make those pies.
oh yes, I have pics, and in fact, on the cheese one, I tried to draw the flaming pie on it. Um,
Mm.
I tried.
Oh,
I
you
know
told,
it.
and I saw that. Yeah, it was cute.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I tried, and yeah. So yeah, you too can make these pies. This little booklet.
And I will make those once I get my flaming pie oven mitt.
Oh my god, you have to. So good. Also in this box, two folios with all kinds of pullouts. There's, a copy of the club sandwich, which I have right next to me. It's, a facsimile, obviously, of the original that came out with Flaming Pie. Club Sandwich is Paul's long running newsletter. And while I was like looking at this, I'm like, why did they ever stop Club Sandwich? Because this was like hashtag iconic.
I think when Linda died, he closed it down.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes me sad.
Yeah, it was like homegrown. Like it was really from them. And so
Yeah.
I don't think he had the heart to continue it after that.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes you sad. But anyway, so you have your club sandwich in there, and you have the Flame newsletter, which was sort of like just a PR thing for the album, and then you have a pic that falls out. Like I said, I would have lost it had I not known it was in there. Tons of reproductions of handwritten lyrics, and there's also a reproduction of John Hamill, who was Paul's assistant at the time, his notebook from the recording studio, and his job was to write down what everybody played on every note of the album. So you
Oh
have
my God.
all of that. Plus, they've printed out like photos that you would get like maybe like at Walgreens if you're printing out digital prints, and just sort of stuck in the notebook randomly of all the instruments. Well, some of the instruments used on the album, and then it's written on the back like Hoffner bass, like we don't know, and like the different names of the instruments, which is really cool. It feels real. It feels like you picked up the real thing.
So much care was put into this box.
Oh my gosh, so much, and it deserved it. Like I'm just so yeah, I advocate for this box because it really does my favorite album justice. I'm so happy with it. But yeah, so again, like check out shop.paulmccartney.com or your local record store. Support your indie retailers. It was just record store
Yes.
day. It's going to be record store day again next month. So get out there and call your record store if you don't know where you can get this set. Sometimes they can order it. So that's my PSA. Any closing thoughts on Flaming Pie, Erica?
I just love seeing these Paul McCartney albums come out again. They do such a wonderful job with them musically, with visually, and with all of the things like the Instagram filter that they had to put yourself on the cover of the
Oh
Flaming Pie
yeah.
album. I just love seeing the Paul McCartney team taking an album and reinventing it. So, and this one is a particularly great album. So they really pulled out all the stops for this, and I think that it's a wonderful addition to the archive collection, and it's just really lets you in on the recording process. And it was such a special time with the Beatles anthology just coming out and working with Ringo, with George Martin. So, thumbs up from me. I love it.
Yes.
How about you? Any last thoughts?
Agreed. I mean, yeah, co-signed everything you said. I am beyond thrilled with this. Yeah, I mean, the Paul McCartney team is unreal. Like I used to work in social media and I am just marveling what they do and how they bring, the listener into the experiences with these albums. So I'm so excited that Flaming Pie got the treatment. I can't believe it still. And yeah, just A plus 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 plus. It's like the scene in the Christmas story, the teacher writing on the board, A plus 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 plus. That's what it is. So
Yes, it is.
hooray. Hooray, Flaming Pie.
Yay, Flaming Pie, yay, Paul, yay for pie in general, yay for pie.
Now I want pie.
I think that it's time to go make
Get
a
some
pie.
pie? Yeah, okay. Let's go get pie.
All right. And thank you so much for listening to BC the Beatles.
Yes, and as always, subscribe on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening right now, and give us a rating, review, so other Beatlemaniacs can find us.
Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I would suggest that if you have not done it yet, do it before John's birthday because we're going to be doing some stuff. So
Stuff, yes.
be there. Yes, be there for our stuff. Also, you can always email us at bcthebeatles@gmail.com. See you next time.
Bye.